I told a dad joke that caused my stepdaughter to vanish. AITA. Alright, so here's something that's been bugging me for the last few days, and I'm honestly not sure if I'm just overthinking it or if there's something genuinely weird going on. This feels like one of those stories that would get buried, but here it goes. First, a bit of backstory. My stepdaughter, Madeline, was about a year old when I married her mom, Jessica. Her biological father passed away before she was even born, so I've been the only dad she's known. Madeline is now 15, and she's been going through a pretty intense rebellious phase lately. She's been pushing back on almost everything. A couple of days ago, we had a bit of a showdown. She did something she knew was against the rules, so I laid out a punishment. That's when she snapped at me. "You're not my dad. I don't have to follow you." It stung, but I kept my cool and told her I'm still your legal guardian for the next 3 years, and as long as you're in my house, you have to follow my rules. Classic, right? Nothing out of the ordinary, just typical teenage drama. Fast forward to the next day, and we're all out grocery shopping. Madeline says she's hungry, and in a moment of what I thought was dad joke genius, I reply, "Hi, hungry? I'm not your dad." My son bursts out laughing, my daughter just goes silent, and my wife gives me the look. You know the one. She told me not to stoop to Madeline's level, but I shrug it off. It was just a joke, after all. Now, here's where things start getting weird. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of whispers. I thought maybe it was just the wind or something, but the whispers were clear and distinct, like a conversation happening just outside my door. I couldn't make out the words, but I was sure it was Madeline's voice. I got up to check, but as soon as I opened the door, the whispering stopped. I found Madeline sound asleep in her bed. Weird, but I chalked it up to my imagination and went back to sleep. The next morning, things got even stranger. Madeline was eerily quiet during breakfast. When I asked if she was okay, she just looked at me with this unsettling, almost knowing smile. Throughout the day, small things kept happening. I'd find objects and places I definitely didn't leave them, lights flickering on and off, and cold drafts in rooms where windows were firmly shut. Then, last night, things took a turn for the truly bizarre. I woke up again, this time to the sound of someone calling my name. It was Madeline's voice, but when I checked her room, she was once again fast asleep. As I turned to leave, I heard a faint echo of my earlier joke, "Hi, hungry? I'm not your dad." It sent chills down my spine. I swear, it wasn't coming from her. It was like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. I've been on edge ever since. Part of me thinks it's just stress and my mind playing tricks on me, but another part of me can't shake the feeling that there's something more to it. Maybe it's just teenage angst manifesting in odd ways, or maybe ... I don't even know. I keep trying to rationalize it, but the whole thing just feels off. So, Reddit, AITA, am I losing my mind? Is this just normal family tension escalating into my overactive imagination, or is there something genuinely strange going on here? Update 1. Alright, so I wasn't expecting to post another update so soon, but things have taken an even stranger turn, and I feel like I'm going crazy. Since my last post, the weirdness in the house has only intensified. It started with more small things, doors I knew I had closed being open, lights flickering at odd intervals, and that unsettling feeling of being watched. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just my imagination or the house settling, but then things got harder to ignore. A few nights ago, I was sitting in the living room, trying to relax and watch some TV. Out of nowhere, the TV switched channels by itself. I thought maybe it was a glitch with the remote, but when I picked it up, it was off. As I reached to turn the TV back, it switched off on its own. At this point, my heart was racing. I called out to Jessica, thinking maybe she was messing with me, but she was in the kitchen, completely absorbed in a phone call. Then Madeline walked into the room. She didn't say anything, just stared at the TV, then at me with that same unnerving smile she had the morning after the whispering incident. "What's going on, Madeline?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She just shrugged and said, "Sometimes things are not what they seem." Before I could respond, she turned and walked away. That night, I had a vivid dream, or at least I think it was a dream. I was in our house, but everything was slightly off. The furniture was in the wrong places, the colors were all muted, and there was this overwhelming feeling of dread. I wandered through the house, calling out for my family, but there was no answer. When I reached Madeline's room, the door was slightly ajar, and I heard that whispering again. As I pushed the door open, the whispering stopped, and I saw Madeline standing by the window, looking out into the darkness. She turned to me and said, "You shouldn't be here," in a voice that wasn't quite hers. Yesterday, things escalated even further. I came home from work to find Madeline in the living room, surrounded by what looked like my belongings. My watch, my keys, some of my books, just a bunch of random stuff that seemed to have no connection. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She looked up at me with those eyes that seemed far too knowing for a 15-year-old. "I'm just organizing things," she said, her tone casual, but there was something off about it. "Why are all these things from my office?" I asked, trying to understand what was going on. She didn't answer, just gave me that smile again and walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like someone was standing over me, watching. At around 3 a.m., I got up to get a glass of water and found Madeline sitting at the kitchen table in the dark. She was just sitting there, staring at nothing. When I turned on the light, she didn't even flinch. "Madeline, are you okay?" I asked, feeling a mix of concern and fear. She slowly turned to face me and said, "Do you believe in coincidences?" Before getting up and walking back to her room, "I have no idea what's going on. I keep telling myself there's a rational explanation for all of this, but every time I try to find one, something else happens that makes me doubt my sanity. I don't know if it's just teenage rebellion taken to a bizarre extreme or if there's something more sinister at play. All I know is that my house no longer feels like my home, and my stepdaughter no longer feels like the girl I've raised for the past 14 years. Has anyone else experienced something like this? I'm desperate for some kind of explanation or advice because right now, I feel like I'm trapped in a nightmare that I can't wake up from." Update 2. I wasn't planning on posting again, but things have reached a point where I need to share what happened. I'm not sure how to make sense of it, and I hope writing it out will help. Here's the final update. A few nights ago, the situation escalated to a level I never could have anticipated. It was late, around midnight, when I woke up to the sound of the piano playing in the living room. We don't own a piano. I woke Jessica and told her to stay in the bedroom with our son while I checked it out. I grabbed a flashlight and made my way downstairs, my heart pounding with each step. When I got to the living room, the sound stopped. I flicked on the lights and saw Madeline sitting on the couch, staring at the empty space where the sound had been coming from. "Madeline, what are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked at me with those same unsettling eyes and said, "Sometimes you hear things that aren't there. Sometimes you see things that aren't real." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I was about to say something when all the lights in the house went out. The darkness was complete, and I could barely see my hand in front of my face. The only light came from the faint glow of the moon through the windows. I heard footsteps coming from the kitchen, slow and deliberate. I shone my flashlight towards the sound, but there was nothing there. Then the footsteps stopped, and a voice low and unfamiliar whispered, "You shouldn't have come." At this point, I was terrified. I called out for Jessica, telling her to stay upstairs and lock the door. I turned back to Madeline, but she was gone. The house was silent again, but it felt oppressive, like the walls were closing in on me. I made my way back upstairs, checking every room for Madeline, but she was nowhere to be found. When I reached our bedroom, I found Jessica and our son huddled together, wide-eyed with fear. "She's gone," I said, my voice shaking. Madeline's gone. We spent the rest of the night huddled together, too afraid to sleep. When the first light of dawn broke, we started searching the house again, but there was no sign of Madeline. It was like she had vanished into thin air. Hours turned in 2 days, and there was still no trace of her. We reported her missing, of course, but there's been no news. It's as if she was never here at all. Her room is empty, her belongings untouched, but there's a sense of something left behind, an absence that feels almost tangible. The house feels different now, heavier. We're all on edge, jumping at the slightest sound. Sometimes, late at night, I think I hear her voice calling out, but when I go to check, there's nothing there, just silence. I keep replaying everything in my mind, trying to find some rational explanation, but I come up empty every time. There's a part of me that wonders if this was all just a series of bizarre coincidences or if something more sinister was at play. Whatever the case, our lives have been irrevocably changed. Jessica and I have decided to move. We can't stay here, not after everything that's happened. We need a fresh start, a place where we can try to find some semblance of normalcy again. To anyone reading this, I don't know what to say. Be careful, pay attention to the little things, and trust your instincts. Sometimes, the things we can't explain are the ones that change us the most.